I do remember the day war broke out. I'd been in hospital, I had scarlet fever, and I was sent to the isolation hospital. While I was there, my parents went to North Wales, and they promised that when I came out they'd take me there. But it happened that war broke out the day we were due to go, so I didn't get to North West till long after the war. My father was a butcher, and my mother helped him in the shop during the war because he was also an auxiliary fireman.
Did they always remain in Beeston? They
Yes.
never moved anywhere?
Although, no, they didn't move to live anywhere else, although I believe my father went down to London to help out in the Blitz.
Have you any other particular memories of school at the time?
I remember, I went to 2 or 3 schools, small schools, but I do remember being at school when there was an air raid. And we looked out of the window and I saw incendiaries bouncing across the playground, which I thought was extremely exciting.
Did you see any other bombing in and around Nottingham?
There were a few bombs dropped in Beeston, yes, and there was some in Nottingham. They were trying to hit Chilwell Depot, I think, the Ordnance Depot, but fortunately they missed. But there wasn't very much damage, a few walls knocked down and windows out, but nothing of great importance, I don't think.
Did the bombing happen very frequently?
I think I only remember the ones that did happen, and I can't remember really whether they were close together or not. I can only sort of pick out 2 or 3.
Okay. Were there ever any sort of underground shelters?
When the war first broke out, the cellar in our shop had the freezers, the fridges in. So we used to go to the shop next door, into their cellar, when there was an air raid. And I remember my brother was a baby, and the next door neighbour had a baby. And I remember them being put on a shelf in the gas masks that you put the whole baby in. I remember that very clearly. We moved, went to live in a house, and the first shelter we had was the reinforced table in the dining room, and then we had an air raid shelter in the back garden.
Did you ever use the air raid shelter in the garden?
Yes, quite often, I think. I liked that. It smelled funny. And I always got very excited about getting up in the middle of the night.
Did you see much bomb damage?
No, not a lot. No, I can't say I did.
When they were bombing, do you think they were picking specific targets, or was it just general?
I think as far as I was concerned, I was perhaps a bit too young to bother very much about what they were actually doing. But I remember them saying they were trying to bomb the Ordnance Depot at Chilwell. I think there was some bombing in Nottingham, but I don't think there were any raids, like really bad raids like there had been on other cities.
So would there have been any specific targets in Nottingham City itself?
I think they hit Boots, some of their factories in Nottingham, I think. 1 or 2 other factories. Don't think they hit Raleigh or anything like that. I remember going to see my mother's relations who lived in Coventry just after the bombing. I can remember seeing all the smoke and it smelt horrible. They weren't hurt, but I think there was a lot of mental damage. I know one of the daughters lost her voice, and it took about 30 years before her voice came back. But no, my childhood was, to me, as I remember, was always very happy, very normal. It was just the way things were. I remember one of, I don't know if it's VE Day or VJ Day, but I remember going outside. We lived opposite a Territorial Army Hall, and the tanks from Chilwell Depot came along the road to the hall, and there were all these soldiers standing on them. And a woman ran out of the house with a tin tray with lots of glasses on it, and they were shouting and cheering. And the father said to my brother, who was quite small, just remember this, because it's a very important day. And I did ask him before he died if he remembered, and he said, yes, I do. He said, I can remember feeling the warm pavement under my feet, and Dad saying to me, remember this, son. I do remember there was a raid on Skegness. We'd come to Skegness for the weekend, because I think my father was very tired. He'd had a lot of nights out of bed. And there was a raid on Skegness the night we were here. And we went out the next morning, and I remember picking up shrapnel. I seen them carry bodies out of the hotels on the front. I was quite intrigued at this, you know, ambulances and stretchers with red blankets on. No, I just thought it was quite exciting. It's horrible when you're a child, you don't realise what things are. But that was quite an event. My parents very much in those days, because as far as I was concerned, and quite a lot of other people I think my age would say, parents never gave you any inkling that they were worried or frightened or that things were so bad. They just seemed to keep a very normal life and kept things as... I mean, mothers did such a tremendous job. I just don't know how they did it. Most of them had jobs. They had to queue for food, and life was really hard. But as a child, this was just something normal.
How did your father cope with running the business during the war? I mean, we're all aware of rationing and that sort of thing. Did he manage to cope okay with providing the meat that people required?
I think looking back now, not at the time I didn't think this, but looking back, I think he did get very distressed. I think my father felt it very much because he was very proud of his job, and he hoped he was a good butcher. I know he was very kind to people after the war who found things difficult. But my father was, he was a cheerful man, and he'd always got a joke, and he'd always got a smile, and he was always willing to talk to people, and I think probably that helped him. I don't think a lot of people got angry with my father because he couldn't or wouldn't provide what they wanted. I think perhaps his manner ameliorated that a bit. Yeah.
Is there anything else you can remember about your childhood days?
They were very happy. Very happy. Yeah.